So the second season of The Shield more or less picks up after the first. Vic and his team are still up to no good in the streets, Aceveda is still trying to bring him down, and Julian is struggling to come to terms with his sexuality. In fact, interestingly, Aceveda and Vic come to something of an understanding this season, with the chief knowing he needs Vic's successful arrest rates for his political career, and occasionally looking the other way when Vic's unseemly methods prove to be, as they often do, more effective than legal means. In terms of the quality of the second season, I'd probably rate it pretty much the same as season 1. I think I prefer season 1. That could be because the honeymoon period has worn off and I'm more used to the show now, looking at the show with more of a critical eye now, or because there are elements of this season that do take you aback slightly. This season does seem a bit hyperactive with the cameraman, for example. I get it, it's a gritty show. Take it easy with the constant snap zooms and waving about of the camera. In general though, to summarise, Season 2 is pretty much more of the same, in a good way. Certainly Season 2 seems to favour explosive spectacle ever so slightly than the simmering tension of Season 1. It's chaotic and it's confident in its chaos, but I am in a constant state of tension watching the show. It's like you're thinking, don't jump the shark, don't jump the shark, with how much is on display. The opening episode, for example, and yes, I know you gotta start big, but Vic and the gang go to Mexico, kidnap a drug kingpin and smuggle him back over the border, getting involved in all sorts of shenanigans along the way. I feel like that should be considered a career case, but in the world of The Shield, it's just another day. There's a lot of heightened elements like that. Like a day in The Shield is like a year in real life. Vic gets shot in one episode and is hospitalized. That could have been the season finale cliffhanger, but here it's slap bang in the middle of a season, and in the next episode he's up and running. You just gotta have to go with it. Vic is more unhinged this season, especially in the first half. He's lost confidence in his team, untrusting of their screw-ups, and he's tasked a PI with finding his wife, who of course upped and went with the kids in the previous season. After he finds his family and they begin living together, the relationship with his wife further deteriorates, with full separation now looking likely. As such, he lashes out at people, especially those on the streets he's investigating, like this one guy, Armadillo, whose face he burns on a stove. Armadillo ends up being a major street player and declares a personal vendetta against Vic and his team, sanctioning their murder, meaning the task force has to get to him before he gets to them. There's so many storylines in this season, it's hard to know which ones to highlight. One of the main overarching ones is of that scrawny little civilian auditor, Lainey Kellis, preparing to release her review of the barn. It ends up getting leaked early, causing major distress among the cops, and once it's actually published, Aceveda is informed cuts will be made and heads will have to roll. Another major plotline is the money train. I didn't even understand it half the time. I just remember the words money train being repeated again and again. An opportunity, essentially, for Vic and his team to steal money from Albanian gangsters, something they prepare for the entire season and end up carrying out towards the end. This season allows the characters to be more fleshed out. Claudette in particular is a standout, who comes to distrust both Vic and Aceveda, suspecting, correctly, that the latter is protecting Vic. She has some great moments, including one where she is at a black murder victim's home and she looks around, sees the victim's children's academic accolades on the wall, and she just sits, takes it all in. She's reminded of her own children. It's a nice quiet moment in a show that is otherwise full of noise and chaos. Dutch fears he's losing his mojo at certain points, and Vic advises him that sometimes when you're absolutely sure the perp you're interviewing is guilty but you don't have the evidence, it's okay to plant the evidence. This leads to a scene where Butch slips in an incriminating piece of evidence at a scene of a crime and begins to drive away. The beginning of Butch's demise as a morally upright character, perhaps. But not before his tires screech to a halt and he comically rushes out to take back what he planted. A minor victory for his conscience, and I'm glad he didn't go ahead with the evidence planting. I remember one episode where the cops go through a woman's shelter in pitch black as dead women are laid out everywhere. It was pretty scary. There was also another minor storyline I enjoyed of Aceveda, as part of some scheme from the higher-ups, having to don a uniform and do street work. He and Julian work on getting back a kid's stolen bike. They find another kid with it, and Aceveda gets him to admit he stole the bike. It's a moment of minor triumph as Aceveda announces that sometimes the street skills never leave you. But when they give the kid back his bike, it turns out it isn't the right one, and Aceveda realizes he's essentially stolen a child's bicycle. It's a humorous little rug pull, But simultaneously, it makes you think just how intimidating these cops must look like to children if one pretty much was coerced into giving up his own possession. The fact that there's so many storylines with these central characters allows for the character interplay to build on what came before. Julian, for example, is getting married to a woman, in part to distance himself from his previous life as a man in the closet, and at one point he's having small talk with Aceveda and asks him for advice, with the chief saying, "Don't have secrets." It's kind of on the nose, especially with Danielle pushing Julian to tell his fiancée the truth, but when you consider that Aceveda had his own issues with his past coming back to affect his relationship with his wife, the rape allegations, whatever happened there, it makes sense that this would be his advice. Speaking of building on what came before, there's an interesting flashback episode which shows us how the bond started. Vic meeting Aceveda for the first time, Claudette and Dutch getting to know each other, all of that. It's the lowest rated episode of the season, but I thought it was pretty good. Danielle has an interesting storyline where she shoots dead a Syrian Arab who got into a confrontation with a neighbour. The Arab was waving a pistol around, and when it was pointed towards Danielle, she shot him. The Arab's devastated wife subsequently spends much of the season trying to ruin Danielle's life, sending prank calls saying her mother died, planting drugs in her car, things like that. You know, the thing is, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this in the comment section below, I always thought the wife had a point. Danielle made a weird comment towards the erratic man who was frustrated at the way he was being treated and got a gun after his neighbour went for her knife. She says something like, "Because some guys who look like your cousin just attacked the World Trade Center." Sure, it might have been the normative American sentiment at the time, but in 2025 it comes off as pretty wild, seeing as though the guy is Syrian, a completely different nationality to anyone who was involved in 9/11. And even if he was, say, a Saudi, the comment was inappropriate, and as a cop, Danielle should have known better and attempted to lower the tension in this situation. Instead, really, she's profiling. In any case, this may come as a surprise, but I've never really been the biggest fan of Danielle. Though she's often portrayed as a straight arrow, I always got a holier-than-thou vibe from her. Her apathy to a lot of the crap that goes on at the barn is not something commendable, and I always got the feeling in season 1 that if it came to it, she'd sell out Julian to protect Vic. And then we see this Arab wife storyline play out, with much of the things Danielle was saying at the time of the initial confrontations, like, "We have to be seen to investigate," coming back at her, with IID saying pretty much the same thing to her as they question her about the drugs in her car. The thing is though, Danielle does go through a lot this season, and once it got to a point that she loses her job because of something Vic does, who doesn't own up to it, I grew to root for her. Danielle being let go is one of the interesting things posed for the future. I hope the show doesn't undo storylines like this, because it lessens the impact of storylines and you begin to feel there isn't real weight or consequence to what happens. I mean, we already know that Vic getting shot doesn't mean much. I do remember seeing Danielle get axed and thinking, damn, she's really gone, that's so harsh. But I was flicking through the title images on my TV for the rest of the show and I saw her in police uniform in season 3, so I thought, looks like it will be undone. The gay Julian storyline was quite interesting. He does some kind of conversion therapy thing through his church and decides to dive headfirst into a heterosexual marriage. I was quite surprised, to be honest, that the conversion therapy was not villainized, not yet anyway, and was played pretty much straight up in the show. With those kind of storylines, you expect the character in question to get up at one point and declare, "No, this is who I am." But for now, Julian is powering through, but it's getting a lot more difficult. That gay guy who he was with in season 1 turns out to be quite the piece of work. What could be interpreted as him attempting to get Julian to realize who he is, devolves into a degenerate loser clearly weaponizing the fact that Julian can't out himself, extorting money from the man under the facade that he's hard up. He takes it as far as he's able to before he exposes Julian, with devastating results for the cop. And it'll be interesting to see how things are for Julian going forward, with him being outed. So there you have it. What do you make of season 2 of The Shield? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.